you'll be in the capable hands of Vice Chair Bryant, will be handling that meeting. In terms of how we go about this tonight, so I just want to see about trying to get consensus on how we do this here. We talked about this, a little bit about this last time. So under old business, I think our goal is to sort of get through function 2 tonight and come up with a proposal. We don't have to do that. I think for whatever reason people think, hey, we need another week, we'd like to do this. I think it would be, since that was one of the things we were charged to do, I think it would be good to try and get that done tonight. And then we have the new business proposals. There's a couple of things I'd like the group to think about on this, just in terms of, I'm seeing sort of several different paths for these proposals. Get some feedback from the group about that. So, first of all, in terms of asking for additional information on any of these items, I'd sort of like to take that up on a per item basis before we actually get into substantive discussion about it. So if people want something, and again, I think we agreed last time that if people want the staff to do something, I think we'd like to have a majority motion to do that. If not enough of us want to do that, then let's not waste staff time and let's move on. But I think in fairness, given the time constraints, let's try and do that for each of these. So if there is additional stuff people want, the staff will have time to get it and consider it for next time. And then following that, I mean, I'm seeing several different, paths again for the way this could be done. And one option would be if the committee feels like, hey, on item X, we feel like we're ready to recommend to the city commission, put this on the ballot and with this language. So that's one way. The second way that we talked about is City Commission, we feel like this is worthy of discussion, but there's not enough time for us to do the proper vetting of this issue in this setting. So that's the third. And then finally, if nothing gets enough votes for either of those, I would say that they just, people suggested that it didn't get a majority approval. Does that seem a reasonable way to do this? Is there no objection? Then we'll sort of march down that path. So why don't we start with public comment then? Members of the public like Mr. Bussey.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Peter Rutzine, 2350 Carefree Cove. We could have opted to have 4 of us come forward and spend 3 minutes each basically reading the letter that we sent to you. We are pleased to see that you've added ethics to the agenda this evening. We are here to fully support the Independent Ethics Board. It was our group, with the help of 67% of the voters, who passed the charter amendment in 2014 that the Independent Ethics Board is in existence. And we agree with their position on the question of the loopholes relating to whistleblower protections. That can only be resolved by a charter amendment. And we also believe that the best way to resolve the issue of whether Tallahassee's ethics ordinances apply to commissioners in their ex officio capacity as members of interlocal agencies would best be resolved by a charter amendment, simply because the only alternative to that is expensive litigation where the taxpayers will be paying for both the plaintiff and the defendant side of the issue. And then we go a little bit further than the Independent Ethics Board by recommending that you strengthen the lobby, that you bring lobby disclosure registration under the Independent Ethics Board rather than simply the City Commission. So thank you. I urge you, I hope that you've read that letter and that you will take it seriously. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Other members of the public like to speak?
Good evening, everyone. I'm basically going to just reiterate what I sent you in an email, because one of you apparently doesn't have a functioning email, so I wanted to make sure that came out. Number one, on single member districts, I want to make sure that's killed. And I want to just give a little bit of context. Everyone should know that the reason we have county commission and school board single member districts is because no black person was created. However, the city did, beginning with James Ford and other people, did elect black people on at-large basis. And that's the reason they were not subject to having single-member districts created. I offer that as historical context. Second, I'm in support of Mr. Payne's proposals that he advanced for ethics reform. I have not seen the specifics of them because I haven't had a chance to be online, but I've heard what he outlined in the last meeting. Those seem reasonable. I encourage you to vote for it. And finally, I know Mr. Struble, Bruce, has a proposal for moving the police chief as an independent appointed official under the city commission instead of as it is now through under the city manager. And I'm in support of that happening as well, because I think it's going to lead to more accountable and responsible law enforcement for the community at large and for law enforcement. So thank you very much.
Any other members of the public? Yes, Mr. Powell.
Thank you. My name is Will Crowley, City of Tallahassee resident. During the last several weeks, I and others have made two key arguments. Test. Can you hear me? So during the last several weeks, I and others have made two key arguments: that this process has been rushed and this body has been stacked to further the interests of the mayor and fellow commissioner. And we also argue that this push for districts was motivated by a right-wing effort to carve out a seat for themselves. Despite assurances that we've heard to the contrary, we've seen evidence that confirms our suspicions. First, we saw the political operatives in this body make their last and most blatant play when, knowing they were outnumbered, sought to delay the vote until they believed fewer of their opponents would be available to vote against them. Then we saw right-wing media personality Steve Stewart come out strong for districts. Not only did he broadcast his desire to see these districts so that he could unseat Commissioner Jack Porter and Commissioner Jeremy Matlow, he personally lobbied the Killarn Homeowners Association to jump into this fight on his behalf. I've seen the minutes of that meeting, and I saw where he was scheduled to speak, and then immediately after, they held a vote endorsing his position. Now, I'm sympathetic to the argument that diverse opinions are worth considering, especially as a Democrat in the state of Florida, where Republicans have the advantage. When they talk about diverse opinions, they say the Democratic Party should be a broken, bloody corpse on the side of the road. That's how Republican leadership talks when they're in the majority. I don't want to see the Republican Party a broken, bloody corpse on the side of the road. I want to see diverse opinions engaging. But let me be clear, when I say right-wing power grab, I'm not talking about people who just disagree on marginal tax rates. Steve Stewart has a neo-Confederate working for his newspaper, Tallahassee Reports, who has gone on record saying that non-Christians don't deserve to participate in government. That's unconscionable. Steve Stewart himself has gone on the radio, going all in on the hateful anti-LGBT rhetoric sweeping this nation, saying that school children should be shielded from the mere existence of LGBT folks. Now, I'm from South Alabama. I grew up in Polk County, and when I came out as a bisexual man, it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. The amount of bullying that I witnessed as a kid towards other people who were open and out scared me to death. And so when we're talking about initiatives, anti-bullying initiatives, that those don't belong in schools, telling these kids that people like them don't belong in this community, I'm sorry. I don't think that voice should be reflected. I don't think that voice should be empowered. So let's be clear about what we're talking about here. I am asking the legitimate members of this body who have earned their way here, not through buying, not through bribing, not through bullying. I'm asking you to see this effort for what it is and protect the members of this community from this right-wing power grab. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public like to speak? Not yet.
The sheriff couldn't do anything. He could have, but he took the easy way out. The police chief certainly couldn't. The end result, most of it, you know, I think, that Morris and Gillum both admitted to unethical activities. Gillum paid a $69 fine. Maddox spent a lot of time, not enough, but at least 5 years in prison. A few of his compatriots joined him. It's okay if you're greedy. It's okay if you're arrogant. But in these cases, they were arrogant and greedy. And when you're arrogant and greedy, you get yourself in trouble. And that's where they wound up. In each of these cases, there's some similarity. I want you to understand this. And I learned this over the last 14, 15 years of chasing crooks. In each case, they have a bag man or bag lady, whether it's Maddox, Marks, or Gillum. They also sometimes are called lobbyists. And once you start increasing the regulation of lobbyists and you have more disclosure, guess what happens to the number of people who want to be lobbyists? The number of people who want to be lobbyists starts dropping. They don't want the exposure, they don't want the limitations, etc. So for the last year at least, I've been talking with the commission. They don't appreciate me very much, but that's okay. Saying we have to have a new definition of what a lobbyist is. The one we have now is ridiculous. The Ethics Commission came up with a good definition. But in fact, it's been turned down repeatedly. I need some help to come up with a better definition of lobbyists. Guess what now happens? They don't call themselves lobbyists, they call them a political consultant. They're not registered as lobbyists. Oh, I'm a media consultant. I'm a message consultant. Any other kind of consultant you want to call yourself, you get a free ride. We need to broaden the definition significantly, include all these people. Don't let them play the game. I'm getting tired of fighting them. I need a little help here. They're opposed to it. You're all appointed by a city commissioner, so you're probably going to aggravate somebody, but it's okay. Your job is to represent the citizens of this community, and we need a new definition, number one. Secondly, I want to strongly support any recommendation that's been made in the past or currently on ethics. It's still the biggest problem that we have. Don't believe there's not corruption in the city of Tallahassee. It's not as arrogant, okay, and they're not as greedy as the folks a few years ago. We still have a problem. Let's try to encourage people to do right. That definition will be critical. Third thing I think is ridiculous to even talk about, and I know you voted on this, somehow to look at giving city commissioners a raise. If you talk to a politician, what do they say? This is public service. I've always wanted to get into public service. Okay, well, getting paid a large salary, public service would be a person would get up there and say, you know, I've worked hard, I've worked long, I've learned a few things, I want to share it with my community. And then you pay them $1 a month. You pay them gas money. Okay, then that's public service. But to say, oh, the county makes $80,000, $100,000, these guys need to make $100,000. It's a part-time job on top of their other government job they have. So if you're going to give them a raise, at a minimum, make sure, as a condition of that raise, that they approve the new definition of lobbyists and the other recommendations from the Ethics Commission. That's a minimum they should be required to do. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment at this point?
Good afternoon to all of you, or good evening. My name is Dwight Floyd. I'm the Executive Director for the Tallahassee Independent Ethics Board. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Greetings to Treasurer Clerk Cook and City Attorney Amy Tolman, and to you all First of all, I want to say thank you for what you're doing. It is a lot, especially in this day and time, to be a public servant and to choose to represent the people of Tallahassee. And that's generally when you decide to be a public servant. I decided to be a public servant when I took this job. And quite frankly, when I took this job, I didn't know what an ethics officer was. I knew I could do work that I saw in the job description, but I didn't know what an ethics officer was. And it's kind of peculiar when you start talking about ethics and, really? Seriously? That was my first reaction. But I've learned the importance of what we do, especially when I started asking myself why. Why do we investigate corruption? It's not just to deal with bad people, but it is to ensure the democracy, to ensure that we have a government of the people, by the people, and for the benefit of the people that are being served, rather than for the benefit of the people that are serving. And so that's the role that we attempt to play. There are two specific topics that this office wanted to touch on very briefly, and I'm almost through. Attorney John Reed, my peer, will speak on one of them. And the one I wanted to touch base on, bring clarity to, is jurisdiction. There's been discussion over jurisdiction when, as some of you saw today, city commission members serve on the board for Blueprint or CRA. Does this board have jurisdiction? We've taken the position, yes, we have jurisdiction. If someone brings us a complaint today, we will act on it just as we would any other complaint. The problem is, it's not explicitly codified in the city charter or in the ordinance. It's left to interpretation. Some have argued that the city commission has said that we don't have jurisdiction. The problem with that is that it's not codified. So the next group of people can come and say, yes, it is. So right now it's just left to our interpretation. We do have a letter from the mayor where he argues that the city commission, we do have jurisdiction over the city commission when they're on CRA and Blueprint. So he differs from the other city commissioners. So right now, where it stands is that if we get a complaint, we're gonna act on it, and we have acted on the complaint where the complaint was brought against the mayor. We went through the whole process. We did a great investigation. I did it, so I know what's going on. We did a great investigation, and we cleared the mayor of the allegation because the investigation is thorough. And that's what we look to do in any investigation, just get to the truth, whatever that truth is. That's done confidentially without exposing the individual. If we find that there is probable cause, then it becomes public and we move through with the process. But we went through that full process without anyone arguing differently. But the discussion came later after that. And he, like I said, he agreed, some disagreed, it's not codified. We're basing our opinion on previous court opinions, previous court decisions, et cetera. And some can argue the same way with other cases. So it's in your hands now. For us, it's a common sense thing. If you work for the city, if your W-2 says you're getting paid by the city, if you say you're an employer for the city, if you carry, where is it? If you carry one of these, this is me. There are people on CRA's staff that carry one of these. And we're simply saying that if a complaint is brought against them, we have jurisdiction to act on it. We're not speaking to the county or otherwise. Now, John is going to talk about whistleblower protection, but I'll just say this one thing, we do believe, as has been stated, that this is a common sense issue. And right now, we're dealing with a lot of legislation that's trying to weaken our ability to do our job. And if that happens, then whistleblower protection may be the only thing that individuals have to deal with retaliation and retribution, which is in government, period. That's a real thing. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, we're here to answer. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members, Mr. Treasurer Clerk, Madam City Attorney. I appreciate the time for us this evening. I am John Reed, I'm the board counsel for the Tallahassee Independent Ethics Board. As Mr. Floyd just stated, I'm going to briefly address the issue of whistleblower, which I believe is on your agenda to be discussed. The purpose of extending whistleblower protections in limited cases to the Ethics Board is that we believe without any protection against retaliation, it creates a chilling effect, where some that may see wrongdoing within the workplace may refuse to come forward out of fear that they'll be retaliated against. We also believe that because of the case law out of South Florida, there could be an unintended consequence where a whistleblower protection against retaliation could be automatically triggered when a complaint is filed with us. But there's no administrative procedures, so the only recourse for that individual would be to file civil litigation, which we think should be avoided. So what's important to note here is that for the Ethics Board, we essentially have very limited subject matter jurisdiction over specific prohibited acts. One of those is misuse of public position. There are areas where a disclosure related to the misuse of public position could also coincide with the disclosures that are enumerated within the whistleblower statute, which are specifically violations of federal, state, or local laws, rules, or regulations that create a substantial and specific danger to the public's health, safety, or welfare. Not so much there, but more so gross mismanagement, malfeasance, misfeasance, gross waste, gross neglect of duty. It's that second group that we come and see could have some overlap with what we are already entrusted to investigate. We simply would like, when we receive a complaint that falls within our jurisdiction under the ethics code, that also coincides with the enumerated disclosures that are found in the state statute, that we could provide the necessary protections for those coming forth so they could be protected against retaliation. As I mentioned, there's a case out of South Florida. It's called IGWE. It's a weird name, IGWE, City of Miami. Running with citation 208, Southern 3rd 150. It's a third DCA case from 2016 in which the court found or held that any body or office that has investigatory powers who receive a disclosure, that triggers the whistleblower statute. So it is our position under the IGWE case that if somebody would come to us and they filed a violation of misuse of public position and also filed within a disclosure that is enumerated within the state statute, they would statutorily be protected from retaliation. However, because we have not been designated as an appropriate local official in any cases, there would be no administrative process for us to handle that complaint. Instead, that individual has no recourse but to hire a lawyer to sue the city. We've taken a position that it would be better to try to keep it in-house, try to resolve these issues if we can ourselves. And that would involve designating the ethics board as an appropriate local official for purposes of accepting whistleblower complaints or disclosures. Now, currently, the Inspector General has been designated as the appropriate local official, and I think he is doing an exceptional job. I think that needs to be said. But I think there is an ability for both of us to serve this position, and this is not unprecedented. The Attorney General was opined on this issue in AGO 2010-48, in which the Attorney General found that Palm Beach County was able to essentially set up the system we're asking for today, where they designated as an appropriate local official for purposes of receiving whistleblower complaints the Inspector General's office as well as the Ethics Commission. So that is what we're asking you tonight. I'm going to be staying here. If you have any questions, I'd be more happy to come and answer them. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Other public comment?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee. Dr. Emma Johnson. I am speaking on 3 different issues: ethics, single member districts, and just in case the issue of making commission positions permanent or full-time positions comes up again, I wanted to speak to that as well. First of all, I support the proposals to codify in the charter ethical practices that all city officials and city staff must follow. As of Tallahassee, I've seen things that happen that I felt were violations of ethics, where there were clear conflicts of interest and city commissioners did not recuse themselves. There should be some guidance in the charter that protects against that. So that issues related to ethics, I am very supportive of. On the possibility of future discussion on making city commission positions full-time employees, I think is absolutely not viable. Right now, the city commission is the highest level that answers directly to the public. Who would be put between the public and the city commission to supervise city commissioners as employees? Who would determine what their job descriptions were and hold them to following their job descriptions? That is a situation that I don't think is in effect in any county or any city in Florida. Elected officials, whether it's in the county, the school board, or the city, are public servants. Recognizing that their time has a value, a salary has been added to that. But nobody expects a city commissioner to be just another employee in city government. They serve the public. They are public servants. And I know from experience as a former city commissioner and as a former mayor, and all the while, I was also a teacher and educator at Florida High. And I didn't let any of that get in the way. I made sure that nobody thought I was not doing my job for the city or for Florida High. When city business was going on during my workday, I took unpaid leave and worked wherever I needed to work and did a lot of good work for the city. Now, I know Mark does workshops for city commissioners on a lot of different issues, including ethics. But I don't think there is the real codified investigative arm for that, or any real penalties for violations. On single member districts, as I've said before, I am 100% against it. I was around when the county went to single member and at-large districts. I worked as Anita Davis's, as NAACP president, political action chair, and kicked off that campaign in the county. And the reason it was kicked off was because in the history of post-Reconstruction Leon County, there had not been a minority elected to the county commission, nor was there one for the school board. And so Anita Davis, under her direction, she and I kicked off that campaign and lawsuit with the help of the NAACP National Legal Defense Fund in order to make it possible for a representative government in Leon County. After that happened, the school board did likewise. There is nothing that has to be fixed in the city of Tallahassee as it was in the county and the school system. I moved here in 1971, and for all of the years I have lived in Tallahassee, there has not been a time when there were not minorities represented on the city commission. And it is because the majority of the minority population is concentrated inside the city limits. And that makes it possible for all citizens to be able to elect their city commissioners and not have one district where all of us are packed into one section in order to have a city commissioner. I prefer to have 5 city commissioners who look to me and feel the need to look at my concerns as a citizen of this community. And when 5 commissioners feel that they have to look to your vote just like any vote from anybody else, instead of dismissing you because you're all in one little district and you have one person speaking for you and the others don't have anything in the game and can vote against whatever your needs are, that is not a good situation. And these are the reasons why I strongly support at-large elections for the city. It is, single member districts is just another way of doing redistricting at a local level with packing and leaving out the needs of all other people. And I thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public like to speak? Do we have online? Let's hear it from Mr. Isbell. All right, let's do that, Mr. Sims. We can do this first, and then I'll come back and get you.
I don't like being hugged.
Mr. Isbell?
All right, well, let's see, if he comes back on, we'll come back to him. Mr. Sims, go ahead.
Stanley Sims, 1320 Avondale Way. First, Mr. Chair, again, and all of you members, thank you. You have done an excellent job for allowing democracy to be utilized in these meetings. I want to say, my normal objection, we're talking about lobbyists. We have lobbyists set policy right here, right now, setting my constitution, my local constitution, that are in good with a political path, North Tallahassee. And they sit here proudly, snuff at me, roll their eyes, do these things, treading upon my rights. So when I object to lobbyists, it's personal. When I talk about the ethics board, its lack of help for poor people like me. I sit up under the ethics board for years, multiple problems. I even found out that when the ethics board acted against our former city commissioner, Rick Fernandez, they really went outside of their scope. Why am I saying all of this? We have window dressing, but that's all it is. That's not on him. Mr. Floyd, ain't on you. You can talk about me behind my back. That's not on them. I'm saying that they have created a model that tells us that if you need help, go there. But when you go there, they go, oh, we don't do that. Because actually, when he tells you that he investigates the mayor, he can only investigate the mayor or a city official or if they stole something. You gotta steal money, currency. That's how tight those parameters are. Single districts. I don't like that. And Dr. Bruce Stubble, I'm gonna be very honest with you. The only reason why I don't like that, because everybody I'm talking to, 8 out of 10 people don't like that. Now that's bad. Why is that bad? Because we have not fully educated our people to make good decisions. So that ain't on them, that's on you. Not you, but the city. And so I feel that if you're not properly educated us, we can't properly make a good decision. And so since you have not properly vetted it, why move forward with something if you're doing this for the citizens, then they should be knowledgeable of it. I am willing to do this. If we're not gonna do, I'll give up my, run as long as you want. If you'll give up those single districts, I'm gonna do term limits. Because Mr. Willis, I don't agree with all of your points, but on a good day, 30% of something come out of your mouth. Because the only thing that and it's not your fault, I don't say this in a bad way. Only thing that this board has not done what I was hoping it would do. is giving me some little hope that we can cut down on some of this political partisanship. And that clear retribution of coming after people will stop. Now, his bill was nice, but excuse my expression, I'm catching hell, and he could not do nothing for me. I had to just send another email to Amy. I know that upsets you. Imagine me when I don't get any answers. We're acting like we're helping people and we're not. People are hurting. I don't have his money. I'm just a plain American citizen. I'm just like how all of these people that you finna drive out of here and go back over on the northeast side of town. I'm just like them. I'm just like them. Actually, I walked from my house, 1010 Silver Ridge Road, to that pool. Because we couldn't swim. We couldn't go to Myers Park. I remember those days. Myers Park wasn't far. And then when laws changed that we could go to Myers Park, guess what they did, Dr. Bruce? They built us there a pool. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public would like to speak? Any sign of Mr. Isbell? Okay. All right, if there's no others, we'll turn to old business function two on commission compensation. And as I mentioned last time, just again to try and nail this into, decision points. I mean, it seems to me there's several different options. One is there could be a proposal to sort of keep this, tied to the county, salaries, but in some different percentage. There could be a proposal to move to a completely different structure in terms of either engaging professionals to come together and set the salaries, or to come up with based on a different matrix. Or there could be a proposal to take it up completely out of the charter and have the commission set their own salaries. So with that, attempt to try and, get us in some kind of decision mode here, I'll open it up for discussion on function two. Anybody?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, let me commend Jim and his staff for doing a great job on identifying alternatives. This is exactly what I think we asked them to do. And I think that there are about 5 alternatives that have been identified. And I would really appreciate it if he could highlight these 5 alternatives. I've read it. If you don't mind, just, and really there is comparative data that's in different places, as in the information provided regarding each of the various cities, those of like size compared to Tallahassee, et cetera, so that we can actually come to some kind of, I'll call it coalescing ideas regarding what's best for the city of Tallahassee. If you don't mind, Mr. Chair, is that okay?
Yep. That's fine with me.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. What we did was exactly as you described. We tried to provide information with some different models, mostly trying to come up with something that fit each of the things we heard discussed by you. So we didn't really create anything new, I don't think, that you hadn't had some discussion about. So we identified that first model was simply just some different math, saying if you continue to tie city commissioner compensation to that of county commissioners, it's just a matter of what percentage you want to use. And then beyond that, look to see, might there be some other models that are formulated. Each of those would require, or any of those would require a starting point. So for instance, if you wanted to use a model that said commission salaries go up by CPI each year, that was one we used. Or if you want commission salaries to go up at the same rate as general employees of the city. For any of those, you would have to have a starting point, a CPI starting with some salary in year one, and then you contract it thereafter. One of the things that I found interesting in putting together 5 years' worth of information for all of those things, in almost all cases with a formula, over that 5-year period, I think between 17 and 21%. So it almost didn't matter which formula you used, because all of them are getting at some cost of living going up. And the current model with the county structure isn't exactly that, but it mirrors it largely because there's slow, steady growth of population, and since it's population-based, it looks like some of those CPI things. We did also, what we identified as Model D, that one did come out with slightly different numbers. That's one based on median family income, and I think that would have had a higher increase over that 5-year period, so it would have been an outlier, I think, when you look at those models. And then also identified as Model F, that you'd have a salary study of some kind, a separate analysis to say, let's do a review of function, all of the things that you do in the salary study. I won't tell you things you already know. And so we put all that together. The other thing we did, we put in the material information that we provided early on to you related to salary, so that it was just all in one place. So there's a one page that has Tallahassee and other large cities in Florida, so that you could see the compensation for each. And I think this one included the form of government. I think that was one of the questions early on, was when we see the compensation with the form of government, because sometimes those may be a little different. And then the last was just all of the detail of the different models those cities use. And I think there, as before, the takeaway was that there's not one that everyone uses. There are a number that have formulas. I will point in your material, as it was given to you for tonight's meeting, that issue number 2, salary models, that has the excerpt from February 1st. We did, for the city names, some of them are in blue, the font is in blue. Those were cities where there's something in the charter that sets the salary. So I think that was a question last week as well. Is it always in the charter? Is it never in the charter? So I think we tried to distinguish those a little bit. And one other thing that doesn't really show up here is one thing we did find is that even cities where the salary is not set in the charter, either it's by ordinance or it's given to the commission to set their own salaries, they don't monkey with it very often. They may set it by ordinance, but they might not touch that ordinance, might not have touched it in the last 5 years. So I think the takeaway there, at least for me, was that you want something that's in place that makes sense, so that you don't have to go through an annual process, because it may be a significant issue, but in our case, if you have $1 billion budget, the salary for a given commissioner just isn't the biggest thing you're dealing with on an annual basis, so you want something that works, but that you don't have to spend all of your time on. That last part was probably more editorial than information.
All right, any discussion on this item? Questions from Mr. Cook or anybody else? Mr. Dillon.
I think, first of all, you guys did a great job. I wasn't really expecting this much organized information, but I really appreciate it. I think Model E and the county model, which is Model A, they're kind of same, but different, right? Model E, it has the pro rata share for the population, and I think that's how the state calculates it. But for some reason back then, we decided to just say half of the county salary. I think Model E got something good going on there. I also liked the, let's see, which one was it, Hialeah? Sorry, Cape Coral. Cape Coral was, I think that was Model B.
Yes, we, I think we identified
Yeah.
Cape Model C was the one with the CPI adjustment, and that Cape Coral uses that using the Social Security Index as their model.
Yeah,
And Yankton does that with CPI.
And I think they went ahead and they looked into how many other boards the commissioners or the council members are working on, I mean, serving on. So, I see the CRA, $40,000. So I think they had something good going on. So, looking at multiple boards and multiple positions and how much of a different, because CRA is a different structure, Blueprint is completely different structure, the city commission is different. So, commissioners are serving in 3 different segments. So I think that model and Model E, in addition to the county model, I really like those a lot. So looking forward to the discussion on this.
Yeah, I also am fond of Model E. I thought long and hard about our discussion about taking it out of the charter and doing something maybe ordinance or study-based, but then where I run into a concern there is that this is still the people's money that's being paid out. And I'm not 100% comfortable taking that decision away from the people there. So I believe that that's something that if it's gonna be taxpayer money that's funding these salaries, then the people have a right to have some kind of role in that decision-making process. So with that said, keeping it in the charter, if the language for Model E, that would be a way to, it grows, it's gonna make sure that people are adequately compensated, but at the same time, it's not anything that's so significant that it's going to, I understand it might be a minor percentage of the budget, but it's still not gonna break the bank or anything. So I think that that is a effective means to move forward. So I'm hoping we could find some consensus around one of these models.
Other discussion? Yeah, go ahead.
I think all of these, to Jim's point, have equal value, just as far as, I mean, they all kind of get to the same thing. I think I've gone on the record multiple times as saying I just don't think it makes sense for it to be a percentage of county. I mean, there shouldn't be any portion of city commission pay that's tied to the county. I mean, I think we all have acknowledged that it's apples and oranges. It's not the same. We've talked about it kind of ad nauseum. I still don't believe that the charter is the best place to do this. What I'd like to see is, I think staff has provided a lot of great models. I'd like to see some language where we basically say, we task the city commission through ordinance with crafting a salary formula. We're not gonna give them the ability to just name a number, and we certainly don't want them to do it too regularly, but I think on a regular basis, they need to have a formula that encompasses these data points. So I think we could have a mandate in the charter that basically says by January 1, 2025, City Commission is tasked with creating a formula to calculate salaries based off of population, some combination of population, COLA, CPI, and median family income. And then let it play out from there. And so I think it kind of strikes the balance of, does it reflect our local economy? But it also provides some checks and balances. They have to use actual kind of metrics that apply to us. And I think it takes it out of the charter because that, I just think the way that we're doing it now, I realize other cities do it, but I think we're in the minority of cities that do it this way. To me, I think that's the most efficient way to do it.
Other discussion? Yes, Mr. Bain.
I agree with the concept of taking the comparison with the county out of the picture. There's really no reason for that. Comment that the majority of the public speakers, both in person and on the web survey were against any raise for the city commission. Although I think last week we voted that there should be something, and I agree with that. So it seems like this Model E is popular, and that seems good to me, starting with next January, calculated based on that, but I do think it should be in the charter, not decided by the city commission.
Other discussion? Anybody want to make a motion, or anybody else want to?
I'll motion that we move forward with Model E.
I'll second it.
Second. There's a motion and second to move forward with Model E, and so is your motion that it remain in the charter?
Correct.
But that there be compensation developed based upon the criteria that are set forth in Model E?
Correct.
Okay. And that's been seconded?
Yes.
Is there, yes? Okay. Discussion on the motion?
So I don't have that page with the models on it. So the Model E, the base that it's starting with,
It's still the county, and then it compares.
it's still the county.
Yeah, and then it
Actually, starting with this.
yeah,
what-
and then
what they're
it
being paid.
compares the amount of population that the county has and the amount of population that the city does. And then does the percentage that the city has population-wise, and then does that percentage of what the county has, instead of just like
So
50%.
clear. How does that fall as far as the ranking when you say, oh, it looks like on some of the things was falling in the middle of things.
If you look at the bottom of that page, it had the percentages,
Okay.
and it was like, I think it was right at.
20.9%.
And so, again, slowly,
Yeah.
the starting salary could be what?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure if I have this right, it's based on the county commission salary still. But it's a percentage of the commission county salary, and that percentage is based on the difference between the city and the county populations. Is that not, am I not right? Sharon is nodding no. Sharon might have a better idea.
Well, yeah, but let's ask the motion maker to clarify, because I was going to ask the same question. I mean, a lot of this depends on where you start. And so I think what's here is sort of starting from, X dollar amount. So I think that we probably need to be clear about, are we suggesting starting from the current city commission salaries? Or are we starting just to take it from ground zero, and commissioners, you decide when to start from, or
So when I was looking at this, my understanding was that it was going on where we are now, and then it would go accordingly based on this, this ratio that they have here. So,
So your motion is that you would start from the current city commission salaries, but the adjustments would be based on Schedule E and no longer on what the county commission salaries do? Yeah?
I'll tell you what this is doing. That doesn't mean you have to do it, but what we have in Model E is it does say that, so the mayor's salary currently is the same as the county commissioner. And in Model E, that would also be true, no change there. In the current model, a city commissioner makes 50% of a county commissioner, whatever that is. In Model E, what it says is that a city commissioner's salary would be set slightly differently. In other words, the percentage that the city population is of the county population would be the percentage of the mayor's salary that the city commissioner earns. So if Leon County grew so that, in a way that everybody moved to the county and nobody lived in the city, and suddenly 10% of the people lived in the city, and 90% were outside the city limits, then the city commissioner would make 10% of what the mayor makes. That's obviously not the direction of things, but as an example. And then currently, about 2/3 of the Leon County population lives in the city. So a city commissioner in this model would make 2/3 of what a county commissioner makes.
so it's still based on the county only in that original, I guess the original part. But
Starting with the
then-
mayor's salary, I mean,
Okay.
that's right.
So yeah, then it still stands. I think that it makes sense, so.
Okay. Is that clear to everybody? Because I was confused, so
So-
just making sure
Yeah,
everybody understands.
and can we sort of roughly put that into the equation and come out with a salary?
In that chart.
In that chart?
2023 would be 64,000.
Okay, so
6% increase. 6% increase.
6%.
Okay, Mr. Dillon?
So another way to explain this, right now, $96,000 salary that county commissioners have, that is tied into 301,000 constituents that they have in the county. So if I were to make just simple math here, this system is assigning about 31 cents per constituent. So the city has 201,000 people and 201,000 constituents. So that gets assigned accordingly. So that salary automatically gets adjusted to $64,258 per year, compared to county technically have 300,000 constituents, so their salary is a little bit higher. So this is completely tied, it's tied to the population. Right now, it is tied into the population, but we're just saying that half of county salary. Right now, what we're saying is that city has 300,000 people, city has 200,000 people, county has 300,000 people, so it needs to be 2/3 of the county salary. Makes sense? Kind of?
Yes.
And I just want to remind everyone, this is our recommendation, that this would be on the ballot for voters to decide if this is how they want it to proceed, so.
Recommendation is, and they decide if it's going to be, is that correct?
Okay, other discussion on this? Questions? Yeah, we can take public comment on this. Anybody have anything? Ask you to maybe keep it short, since we were letting things go long earlier. So, anybody want to speak on this? Okay, we ready to vote? Okay. Yeah, Mr. Wells, go ahead.
I still don't support this motion. With all due respect, I just think we're basically taking what we have and we're saying it a different way. And I understand that there is a slight change. I just don't think, I disagree still with plugging a formula into the charter. So I'm going to be against this motion.
Other discussion?
I just want to state that I've moved away from the notion of taking it out of the charter, only from the perspective of being a realist. I think that it is technically, it should be out of the charter from a technical standpoint, but based upon feedback from the committee and the public, due to the lack of trust that we have in our government, it just would not work. Although again, legally and technically, I think that it convolutes the charter and shouldn't be there, but we're not politically there in order for it to actually be implemented.
Amen. Any other discussion? Councilor Presley?
Sure, thank you. So I agree that the best place for this is in the charter. And now that I understand the formula, basically, in simple terms, we're going to give a 20% raise to the commissioners. Right now, is that the suggestion at least? 6%, is that $20,000 I meant to say maybe, or is it $14,000? What is it?
If I may, two numbers there. 6% was in that Model E. If you had had it in place from year to year, then the most recent year, they would have seen a 6% increase. As a comparison to their current salary, which is about $48,000, I see a calculator over there. They get their basically, you're going from about $50,000 to $67,000. So,
25%.
What's that?
25, roughly 25.
Or a $17,000 raise?
Sure.
All right, just want to put it in real numbers. Okay.
Is the recommendation, though, or is the motion to give that increase as a starting point? I think you might need to clarify that in your motion, because it's not clear. So in other words, are you, I guess the 96,061 is the mayor's current salary, is that right?
That's
And
right.
so you would have to, in your motion, I think, maybe include a recommendation about whether you're gonna start
That's
X, Y,
that's what's
22.
contemplated in
Yes.
Model E. So if the motion is that Model E, then that is the contemplated starting point, so nothing additional you'd have to add. But your point is right, you have to start a starting point, and that was what was contemplated in Model E.
I'm sorry.
I think this confusion is speaking to why I feel like we're not doing this the right way, and I understand the politics. I'm here to put good policy in place, and so I think the confusion that we have around this issue is, and we've been talking about it for what, 5 weeks now? We have all this confusion, and then we're gonna kick it to the voters, potentially, if the commission decides to take this, and then they're going to have, I mean, they will have opportunity to look at it, but they're not gonna have as thorough of a review as we've had. And we still are not in a place where I think, I mean, in some ways it feels like we just pulled a rabbit out of the hat. Well, Model E looks good, I mean, Model C looks fine too, I mean, we just picked something, and it feels, and this isn't, this isn't an insult, it just feels a little arbitrary. And, part of me is just like, man, I wanna be done with this, let's just go with it, but I'm like, I just don't think this is the right way to do it. And maybe I'm on an island, that's fine, I'm at the point where I feel like there needs to be something more thoughtful around this. And so, whether it's in the charter or whether it's in the ordinance, I think that, here's how I envision if we were to throw it in the ordinance. Just throw this out there for argument's sake. Maybe I'm just tilting at windmills here. I think if we were to provide some direction, and we were to point to measurable things that are part of our economy or part of our makeup or part of our community, and say you have to use these as an anchor and then figure something out, my suspicion is that the commission will then look to somebody that has some sort of economic background, my hope would be, and I also think that there's a way that we can ensure that by the way we craft the language, but my hope would be that there would be somebody who's more educated than me and you and everybody on this board that can take a look at this particular item and say, this is probably what makes sense. So that's where I'm at. I've always said this is the one that I think I struggled the most with, but I think it's true for all of us. I mean, it's the last one left, and so I don't support the motion. I'd be open to an alternative motion. I'm open to other ideas. I want to get to the right spot on this, and I do think it just feels like we're just knocking it out to knock it out. Again, I don't mean that as like not throwing you all under the bus. It just feels like we're picking something for the sake of picking something. I just don't like it. So.
Well, if you're on an island, I'm on a different one, because I'm voting against any of these. So,
I'm gonna withdraw the motion.
Okay.
I'm sorry, no, point was made from most board members. This is not as clear as when I looked at it, I thought I understood something about the starting point, and now I'm seeing that it will be starting a lot higher than I anticipated there. So, I would like to see if there's another way we could approach it before we rush through it. So.
Well,
Yeah, sure.
you surprised me with that, but I thank you also. I thought the case for keeping this in the charter was very good. And although I'll probably be voting against any raise, because I was on board for a little thing, and then when I found out that the cost of living was already occurring. But, and this isn't what I'm going to say right now, the whole thing, we've gone over it with the, how do you do 2 full-time jobs, how do you, all these other things, that you're a public servant. And this is not my idea, but in speaking to people in the community, one of them suggested, and it's not something that I don't think we could possibly include in our formula right now, but it was that getting back to the strong mayor, weak mayor, we can't touch the mayor right now as far as salary, but there is a discrepancy that I feel is very unequal. And in trying to, you know, this is, even when we say it's 31 cents per person, it's still 31 cents to that individual, and the times can get very hard for a lot of people. So I'm always on, you know, trying to save the taxpayer expenditure. The idea that was put forth to me was to, when the mayor, if and when that happens, changes, election, new mayor is going to be coming in, that gap be eliminated, or only have a small amount for the extra duties that the mayor does. And that would be a savings that could be divided among all the commissioners. And so I thought that was an interesting concept. But I think having it in the charter, I think having a formula, are all very good things.
So I guess, and this is, I hate to say this, but this is playing out kind of how I thought it would. Because, you know, people, I thought from the beginning we're going to be at a bunch of different places on this particular topic. So I'm trying to see, you know, there's several different ways we can go about this. We can entertain other motions, and, if there are other, models or portions of models that people want to do, we can defer this and have this dealt with at the last meeting, if there's any sentiment to do that. You could, if there's a majority of this committee, it seems like there is, it would recommend some increase in the salaries. You could always, forward to the commission a general recommendation that there be that, and have them decide how they want to put it on the ballot. So I'm just trying to come up with some options, for what we might do. Or we could do nothing, which would be okay with me. But my sense is that you guys want to do something. So I'm trying to help out if I can. Mr. Payne.
I like the idea of deferring it to next week. One piece of information that I have asked for in the past, and you may have gotten it, but I don't remember. There was a confusion about whether or not the county commission salary is set by the legislature, or as one of our speakers said, it's been separated from that with the adoption of the county charter.
I think we have the answer to that now. So,
The answer to that is that previously, the county salary was set as required by statute. Now, with the county's charter, it's not required to be that way, but they've made no change to their formula, so they have continuously followed that state formula, though with the formulation of their charter, they could deviate from that if they so chose.
So is there a motion? What's the preference, Commissioner Brown?
I'm not giving a motion, but if we're going back and coming back next week, let's at least get information that will help us make a decision. Even if the decision is general, with A, B, C, D to be considered in your deliberations regarding putting whatever on the ballot. But to come back and do nothing, for me, is not a viable solution. We ought to do something. Now, I do believe that if we go back and come back with additional information, I've been thinking we are comparing populations and cities, but how many cities actually do or have the major responsibilities of the city of Tallahassee? How many of them own their own utility? And these get to the factors, I think, that you may have been trying to get to in terms of what do you consider. It has to be more than population. Right. So what are the other things that we do? And I won't start to number them, but talk about them. But I would suggest that there are other things that if we actually were doing a comparison to other cities, that we should look at. And not just population is obviously something we should look at. I'm not in any way dismissing that, but there has to be some other things. But I just really want to go on record as saying that I think we must make some type of recommendation back to the city regarding this item.
Mr. Wells?
I liked, Mr. Chair, I liked the idea of just letting the commission, I mean, I think we can give them this list of models, say, you wanna move forward, because, I mean, I think we're struggling with the fact that, you know, do we wanna put this forward, and do we trust the people to put on the ballot, will the people vote for it? I mean, I think at this point, maybe we should just send it to the commission, they're gonna decide one way or the other anyways, and let them determine what makes the most sense. They can put it in the charter, they can put it in the ordinance. The ultimate ballot initiative is gonna come from that body anyways. I've heard several commissioners say on the record that they were not for a salary increase, so in some ways, this may be an exercise in futility. And so I'm gonna make a motion that our recommendation be to the city commission. We've examined this item. Here are models A through F. Our recommendation is that you decide to use these models or some combination of these models or not, and determine whether that goes on the ballot or not.
And is that motion for some support of an increase in connection with that?
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna vote, it's gonna be, I'm assuming they're gonna craft it and then it'll be an up or down vote, so the way I assume it would work is they would put together some sort of, okay, this would be the increase, and then the vote would be yes increase or no increase.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, guys, for lack of a second. Another motion, or would you like to, yes?
Well, I don't have a motion, but I'll give this as an example with the caveat that this kind of rough language is what I think is ultimately misplaced in the charter. But an example of how we could proceed with Model E is something like, you know, we support a graduated increase in the city commissioner's salary until such time that the salary is equal to 60% pro rata share of, and pick up the Model E language. What that does is it doesn't create the immediate jump, but it gets the city to a point of equity, which is something that people have spoken of. Again, it's really convoluted, but it's just an example of how I think we can, if we decide that we want to do something, we can essentially bifurcate it so that we're saying that the increases are gradual, because people don't want a huge 25% increase, and still tie it to something that has longevity.
Mr. Payne?
Could I would make a motion that staff come back, the city attorney come back with specific ballot language to translate each of these models into sample ballot language so that it could be presented in an understandable way to both the city commission and the public.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, motion is second. Any discussion? Mr. Dillon?
I agree where we're going with that, because I frankly don't think Model E is going to be easy to translate to the voters. But I think it will be a better use of city attorney's time if we actually decide a pathway. And I don't know if you don't mind to come up with 6 or 5 different languages. We will be fine, but I think there are some, at least that Model F, I'm not sure Model D, maybe we can eliminate a couple of them so that maybe the city attorney can have a little bit easier time to come up with the language. But I do agree that Model E is going to be hard to explain. For that reason, I actually am sympathetic towards Model A, which is still tying it to the county commissioner, which is not a popular idea, I get it, but I think it's easy to explain to the voters that city commissioners make X amount or X percentage of the county commissioners. That's, I think Model A has the easiest way to explain even if it's just 60%, 67%, whatever it is, Model A to me is the easiest way to explain it. For Model, when it comes to Model E, I just want to make the comment that I think we made the motion, and motion passed with 9-1 to recommend something, and I think we were appointed to this board to make recommendation. I don't agree with the idea to punting the ball back to the commission. I guess our purpose here to voice our opinion on all these matters. Again, I'm just gonna say that we are an advisory board, we don't make decisions here. City Commission will not make decisions. Voters eventually in November or August, not sure which date, but they'll make the final call whether they want to give their commissioners raise or not. So I am in favor of making a motion either tonight or tomorrow night. I mean, the next meeting. We can come back tomorrow night, but I'm in the next meeting. But I'm in favor of making a recommendation to the City Commission. If you need more time, if you need to take another week to research more, I'm all in favor of it. But I think we need to make a recommendation.
So there's a motion on the floor in a second. I mean, and you had mentioned, do you want to offer an amendment to maybe strike, because I'm sympathetic also to the city attorney to have to come up with ballot language for stuff, that, 6 different things is a lot of effort, but that's up to you to make the motion and the board to consider.
I mean, what would a substitute motion look like to that?
Well, the motion, I believe, Mr. Payne, was to ask the city attorney to create ballot language for each of these models here, so A through F.
And that's more for our own understanding and the city commission's understanding.
I feel like it's possible not to get rid of F entirely. I know that it is both Mr. Willis's desire, and I have also stated that I think a salary study is not completely out of line, and I would like to keep that as one of the options.
So if I may make a substitute motion to have city attorney come back with a language for Model E, Model F, and any other favorite models out there? It sounded like a Tesla car salesman.
Is that, so that your motion is an amendment to the motion to whittle down to models E and F that come back with ballot language?
And A.
Or
Okay.
Substitute motion to limit the language to only 3,
Okay.
A, E, and F.
Okay, is there a second to the substitute motion?
I mean, I'll second it so we can talk about it.
Okay, so, motion made and second, is there discussion on that? Ms. James?
I'm concerned that the language isn't gonna help us reach any closer to a decision. That's my comment.
Mr. Willis?
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think language is gonna get us any closer. I also think, as it relates to Model F, I appreciate the goodwill there, but it doesn't make sense if it's in the charter, and so I'm getting the feeling that the direction of this committee is not to take it out of the charter, so I think that's a little bit of a waste of time. I just don't see how you would put a salary study committee in the charter and then also execute on it through the charter. I mean, I could be wrong, I know you're an excellent attorney, I'm sure you could find something, but it feels a little wonky, and I don't know that makes sense, so.
Are you saying to make a charter provision that requires a salary study?
Yeah, but so, I'm thinking through, okay, so you have a salary study that's required by the charter, and then who executes on that?
Right.
It would have to be, you would have to direct somebody to execute on the study. The charter, as a document, will not execute it itself.
That's correct.
And so, I don't know legally how you would put a process in place that use the salary study by keeping it in the charter. So I think that's a little bit of a waste of time.
Other discussion on the amendment, or the substitute motion?
Was that second?
Yeah. Okay. All right, should we vote on the substitute motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Let's raise your hands, let's see. Okay, all opposed? All right, so the substitute motion passes. So the direction is for the staff and the city attorney to come back with proposed ballot language for models A, E, and F, right? Okay. And then this will be addressed at the next meeting. Okay. All right. There's that. Okay. All right, so we're back now to new business and the duties of the Independent Ethics Board. We've heard from the public earlier on this. I mean, we have one more shot. Anybody want to say anything briefly on this item?
What's the
item?
item?
Don't see anything.
What's the item?
This is the ethics board issues. Duties of the Independent Ethics Board. Okay. All right, discussion committee member, Mr. Dillon.
I wanted to quickly ask, earlier, Dr. Jackson brought up the definition for the lobbyists. Can we have that discussion under this topic, or can we add that once we're done with this? Because and again, the question will be, is it the Independent Ethics Board that defines the lobbyists, and is there a recommendation? Is there something that City Commission didn't pass, or can we do anything about it through the charter?
Why don't we, if we could, maybe take these in two different pieces of this, and so we can sort of work our way through these. So we can start with that one if you want. I mean, this is the one, if I understood correctly from Mr. Butsine, this is the one that the, not necessarily the boards have suggested, but that the citizens had suggested also. Do I have that right? Okay. Okay, and Mr. Payne, if you maybe explain what we're talking
Yes,
about.
the Ethics Board is definitely in favor of a redefinition of lobbyists, and it proposed that as an ordinance a couple of years ago, and the City Commission rejected the ordinance as provided. It's my opinion that it can still be addressed as an ordinance. It's really, I'm not sure it's appropriate to put in the city charter definition of lobbyists. It's something that could be addressed by the ordinance. It's just a question of convincing the City Commission to do it.
So that's something that will come from the Ethics Board?
Yeah, it will be recommended by the Ethics Board, or, the City Commission can take it up on themselves. But that's why I didn't put this as one of the recommendations for a charter amendment, because I don't think it necessarily needs a charter amendment to make that change.
I think it's important enough, though, to have the public speak.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
may I just offer a clarifying comment, which I think, because Mr. Payne and I are very aware of this issue, maybe is not clear. The lobbying issue is not currently in the charter. So it's not something where there would be a change to the charter definition of lobbying. It's in, as Mr. Payne said, it's part of the ordinance, rather than part of the charter.
Okay. And one thing just before we go on with this, I forgot, I said, so when we started the meeting, I said we were gonna kind of look at each of these and ask if the committee wanted the staff to spend some other time on getting additional information. So maybe, because I'm afraid we're gonna run out of time here if we don't, so if we could, let's go back to that real quick, and we can sort of run through that, and then we can come back and discuss this. So, Ms. Jack.
And again, I was just gonna ask for clarification in terms of what our posture is, to make sure that, it's my understanding that we are looking at whether or not we want to explore further, that we're not voting up or down on the recommendation as it's presented by the presenter. And to me, that's far different than what I think the posture that we're in, which is, we're just saying, yes, we can proceed with further exploration, not yes to 5, 6, or 7, or no to 5, 6.
Absolutely. So right now, I mean, again, because as witnessed on the last item, the staff is, this is a lot of time and effort to do this. So if people just aren't interested in doing it, I personally would not ask them that, let's not waste a bunch of time. But if people are, then that's fine. But I just wanted to give the opportunity for each of these to at least ask that. Yes, that's true.
And I guess the question is, if there's still, I mean, we have, it looks like sample charter amendments here. Could we move, if we chose to
Yeah,
tonight?
we could, but I'd like to do this first, so
Okay.
we make sure we get to it. Let's just talk, so on the Independent Ethics Board, I mean, some information has been provided by the board itself and by the advocates for it. Is there any additional information anybody wants to ask the staff to do on that? Mr. Rankin.
I just wanted to point out, this charter amendment language that you all found on the sheet there, this was an attempt to offset the vast volume of information that I asked to be presented to you, which there was some extraneous information. It was based on the recommendations for ordinances 2 years ago. Those were rejected on the basis that the desired change could not be done through ordinance. It would have to be a charter amendment that would go to the voters. So basically, this is an attempt, this page with the highlighted pages, is an attempt drafted by the Ethics Board Council to translate all that verbiage that you saw presented to you into basically two sentences. And those are what you see, the entire text is the section 61 of the charter, which governs the Ethics Board. But the highlighted sentences are what would be required to change. And that's the reason that's there, is to make it more understandable for you all. Of course, it is just a sample, it's just a draft. Our city attorney will have her go at it as well, of course. But that's just what that is.
Okay. And it may be that, as we get into the discussion of this, people have, well, hey, it would be nice to know this, but I'm just trying to get a sense of, if there are questions that come out of this, is this something that this committee wants to ask staff to continue to look at? Maybe we just get a quick show of hands, everybody, and I'm sort of in an awkward position. I'm not gonna be here next week, so you guys do what you want. But I don't have any objection personally to, people, it seems like a legitimate topic for this group to consider. So just show of hands, everybody that would be okay with staff spending additional time on this. If there are other questions, raise your hand. So 1, 2, 3, Mr. Cook.
My clarification, is there specific information that we're going to request for this staff?
Depends on what people want. I don't have any necessarily, but we haven't really gotten any discussion of this either.
So are there maybe specific questions about what?
I guess I'm voting to say that we move forward, because if we say no right now, we're saying that this would end right here. Am I correct?
Well, we're saying we're not gonna ask the staff to do anything else with it. Okay, Mr. Willis.
The vote's premature. I mean, how are we supposed to examine whether staff needs to give us more information if we haven't been presented the information that Mr. Payne's put together? I think that this vote is out of order. I feel like we spent a lot of time talking about what we're talking about. I'd like to hear Mr. Payne talk about what he came here prepared to talk about, and then we can put a time limit on it. We're running out of time, but give him a few minutes to go over it, and then at that point, we can say, okay, do we need more information or do we not? I feel like the way that we're doing this is a little out of order, and I'm uncomfortable with that's why I didn't raise my hand one way or the other. I don't know what I'm raising my hand on.
Well, so we've got about 22 minutes here before we're done. And so I was attempting, people want to get information and staff to do something before the next meeting, and we kind of need to tell them to do that, or not to do it. And so again, I'll do whatever you guys want to do, but if the thing is, anybody has any information, just tell them to do it and go do it, we can do that. But again, one of these, I'm really not interested in any more information, but you guys might be, so.
I was expecting that each person that recommended a proposal would present the proposal. in an attempt to advocate for the need for further exploration. So I agree with Jared in that I would like for, Ernie and Bruce and others to present the proposal, like what is it that you're looking to accomplish, what are you looking to put in the charter, and why? And from there, I may have some questions, but I know documentation was provided, but absent a verbal presentation and some argument in support of the proposal, I'm a little hesitant to, I just don't feel like I have enough information.
Okay, well, so given that, then would you like to, for, 5 minutes apiece, tell us what you're looking for, and then we'll decide at the end whether we want additional information and talk about it next time or not? Okay, have it?
Okay. First of all, I want to clarify that what was put in this agenda item as the Ethics Board's recommendations, there are two very separate recommendations. First is the whistleblower authority. This is referring to the state statute that governs whistleblower protection. It is designed so that each government agency at any level will handle whistleblower complaints internally before and to avoid going to the courts. Currently, the City of Tallahassee has designated the Inspector General as the appropriate local official to handle whistleblower complaints. And if you need further explanation about what that is, I can give it, but basically it's to protect people who see bad things. We want them to let us know. We want want it to be reported to somebody, whether it's the Inspector General or the Independent Ethics Board. It needs to be known. But if people are afraid for their jobs, which you can probably imagine a situation where they could be, if they see their boss do something inappropriate, they might not want to report it unless they have protection, that it's not going to affect them. So that's the purpose of the whistleblower protection. Currently, the City of Tallahassee does have whistleblower protection for everybody that is not for anybody that the Inspector General is not independent of. I'm not sure how to word that correctly. But if people see this bad activity going on, they can report it to the Inspector General. The Inspector General, if it follows the very specific guidelines of the whistleblower statute, that he can pursue a investigation and determine whether or not to proceed. Probable cause hearing, all that kind of stuff. There's a hole there that the Inspector General pointed out a couple of years ago, in that he's not independent of the City Commission. So he is really not qualified. He has a conflict of interest. If somebody sees bad activity that the City Commissioner performs, the Inspector General really can't legitimately do an investigation because his job depends on it. What the Independent Ethics Board proposes is they fill that gap, because the Independent Ethics Board is indeed independent of the City Commission. Their jobs, the ethics officer that you saw speak to us, he does not report to the City Commission, City Manager, anybody. He actually reports to the Independent Ethics Board. So it's entirely independent of the City Commission, so that fills that gap. Yes?
Can I engage?
So we're 3 minutes into the 5
Right,
here.
I was just trying one question.
You want to go ahead and do mention the other one?
Okay.
Let's come back to this.
Okay. The other recommendation was relating to the jurisdiction of the Ethics Board. It's a question of whether the jurisdiction of the board over the city commissioners, which it currently has, it can pursue respond to complaints against the city commissioners based on the current ethics code. If that jurisdiction is carried over when the city commissioners sit in outside agencies, such as the CRA or the intergovernmental agency, Blueprint. It is the opinion of the ethics board that it does have that authority, but it has been stated by the previous city attorney that it does not. So both arguments were presented to you in that volume of documentation that we provided to you. The issue of putting it in the charter is to basically clarify it, so that there's no ambiguity in there. Without that, if somebody did make a complaint against a CRA board member, for instance, some future CRA board member might be able to just say, the ethics board does not have jurisdiction here. And they could, if they had actually committed a violation of the ethics code, it would not be covered. By stating it explicitly in the city charter, according to the text that was recommended on this document that I provided, that hole would be filled. And it would cover every city commissioner as they're sitting as a CRA board member or as a intergovernmental agency board member.
And if you don't mind, maybe just hold a question. Let's let each of these run through their 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and ask questions as appropriate. We'll go on, police chief.
Okay, so my recommendation is based on community input, and it was that we consider amending section 136 of the charter to read, the police chief shall be appointed and serve at the pleasure of the city commission, by and serve at the pleasure of the city commission. And this is for multiple reasons. One is to increase democratic oversight of the police chief. It's also in a means to remove some of the bureaucracy in terms of how the police chief has to report. I believe now the police chief reports to an assistant city manager under the purview of the city manager, and it seems very convoluted. So we're looking at ways to reduce this process, have the police chief hired and reporting to them. Now, this doesn't change anything in terms of the city commission having any oversight of the actual police officers. This is more so dealing with the police chief being hired and kind of elevated as an appointed official. I think this helps us in addressing public trust as it results to the police, as it relates to the police. And then also we're looking at, for the African American community, where we do have trust issues with the police, and this is not just an issue here in Tallahassee. You can see this just based off the history of our country and how things have unfolded. We're looking at increasing that public trust. So this may be a means to do it, to have the city commission have direct oversight here in the sense that they are hiring the chief of police. I have reached out to Mr. Cook I asked for just to see how other cities are doing it. I also requested information on what will be pros and cons, what are some of the things that might not work with this, what are some things that are improved here. So I'm hoping that we can have continued discussion about this and consider making this recommendation.
Okay. And then on the single member districts, I believe this was Mr. Millis, is that right?
Yeah, so I made a map, and so this map is based off of the book closing report. The data from the supervisor of elections is based off of turnout in the 2022 election cycle, the general election. This is similar to the map that the supervisor brought us, but I've added some things for context, and I think they're important for a few different reasons. So I think if you just look at a map of Leon County, and you look at where turnout is, it's not necessarily reflective of the purview of this committee or the city commission. And so what I've done here, and I tried to get this as clear as possible while having the full city limits in view. And so what you've got in front of you is, you'll notice we'll kind of work our way out to in. And so the dotted line is the USA. That is the urban service area. That's where we're providing city services. The red line is the city limits. every area that is polka dotted is also within the city limits, just in case you cannot see that red line. And then you'll see a few that have hashes on them, kind of the diagonal lines. Those precincts are primarily African-American precincts. So the way that this looks right now, the whitest precincts, it's basically a heat map. The darkest green is the highest turnout. White is the lowest turnout that there is. And I think you can see that there are parts of the city with extremely low turnout, and there are parts of the city with extremely high turnout. What concerns me is that if you look in the northeast area, you see a lot of dark green, but you'll see a lot of dark green that is inside the USA, that is not inside the city limits. And I think there's an argument to be made, I think Mr. Sims actually made it, that if you are receiving city services, but you are not voting in city elections, that there is an argument that maybe you should be voting in city elections. I think that there is a point in the near future where some of these high voter turnout precincts will become part of our city elections, and I don't think, based off of past history, that the turnout in the areas with the lowest turnout are going to get higher. So what does that mean? That means that those areas that are not voting right now will have their vote diluted overnight if there were any sort of annexation of the Northeast. And I think you'll also note there's no other place to make this up. There's no other area that you can bolster the South Side vote. There's no other area that kind of weighs it out. Like, that's where the growth is going. Whether you like it or not, we've had conversations as a community about urban sprawl. That's where the growth is going. And so for me, I think this item has been misconstrued quite a bit. I'm not advocating for specific lines. There are constitutional requirements for what those districts would look like if we were to move forward with districting. I'm not advocating for a specific party. I maintain that we are very heavily weighted one direction. I don't see any possible way that another party would be able to somehow craft a district out of this, particularly in light of the fact that the ruling party would probably be the one drawing the lines. So my proposal here is just, I see this as an impending problem. And I think a lot of the people that have spoken on this issue have said, well, this isn't a current problem. And I think they're right. And I've said, I think you can take as a point of argument, and I'm willing to accept it, if you look at the current city commission and say this is a perfect representation of Tallahassee, okay, great. What happens in 10 years? What happens in 15 years? And so for me, the argument is not, it has nothing to do with who's in there. It has nothing to do with who's voting now. It's what is this gonna look like down the road? And I think this issue has been labeled, there are ideas about this issue that have been developed before it's even had the opportunity to see the light of day. And so what I'm asking you all to do is look at this, just look at the data. Put the policies, or put the politics, put the partisanship, put the personalities out of your head, and think about what this, because this is real data. This isn't something that is just being, I didn't make this up. I pulled it from the supervisor of elections. I'm happy to release my database so you can see what I've done here. This is the reality. So that's my proposal.
What is the proposal exactly?
The proposal is that we have a conversation about districts. And the conversation can include at-large, it can include all single member. I think what works best is what the county has, which is some combination of both. So the proposal for me is that we have a discussion about single member districts. We have a discussion about what that could look like, the merits, and then if we should have some composition of our city commission be composed of single member districts. So it's not all single member, it's not all at large, it's this committee deciding what our commission, how our commission should look, and if there should be.
So again, I'm just trying to, so we're giving recommendations to the city commission about the charter. So what is the recommendation about the charter here? This is to create.
What is the recommendation about the salary?
Well, the salaries is referenced in the charter. So I'm just trying to understand what, so is the proposal to, suggest to the city commission that they study single-member districts separate and apart from the charter, or what are you talking about here?
So, I mean, we're the charter review committee, and, in some ways I feel like I'm being asked to craft 3 to 4 weeks worth of work in one spot. I do think that it would make sense to, number one, I think we would have to request this because it's not hardware scopes. So the way I envision this going forward is we tell the city commission, look, this, and I think this would be true with any of these proposals. If we were to move forward with them, I don't think next week is the timeline. And so I think essentially what we would do is we would provide our final report of the items that they asked for, and in addendum say, these are the however many items we want to discuss. We have until June to figure this out or not, and let us discuss these items. So.
Okay, well, and again, I'm just trying to understand, I mean, because I think the proposal, for instance, on the other proposals that we don't get to a permanent, decision on, would potentially that this committee could say, we think, city commission, that these are legitimate items for discussion about putting, changes to the charter. I really hadn't envisioned this committee staying together. I'm sure I'm going to be around till June on this, but I, others, are interested in that. That's okay. But I'm understanding better now. So this is part of the suggestion that, hey, there's not enough time for us to adequately look at this in this time frame, but we think this is worthy of further consideration. Is that more or less okay?
Yeah, and I mean, again, going to the other proposals, I think if we were to move forward with any of them, we don't have the time to do it next week. So I would suggest that as a committee, we send the report that we were asked to send on the items that we were asked to discuss, and that these items be given maybe an additional however many days. We can leave it up to the commission, and if they choose to let us talk about them, we do it, and if not, we just all move on with our lives.
Okay, well, so let's, again, in the 5 minutes we have, maybe a little longer here, so just try to frame this for how we want to proceed with one more scheduled meeting. And we have the 3 items on the table. Is there anything on the table that people would consider a vote tonight or next week to actually put forward as an amendment to the charter? And I would suggest actually there's one, and it's one of the ethics things, the one I referenced as being, I thought was a no-brainer, but I still think is sort of, this is the one about the, commissioners serving on outside governmental agencies being, I mean, I have a hard time seeing that that's not even the case already, but Ms. James.
So I had some readiness from a process standpoint, partly because I would like information on each one of them in order to have any further discussion. The issue with one of the ethics recommendations, I'm curious to know the opinion of the current city attorney about this issue of the outside governmental boards, because to me it reads very clearly, it says any board or commission. And so I'm curious to know whether or not it's still the opinion of the city attorney's office that the ethics office does not have the jurisdiction to address complaints that come from citizens based upon commissioners' work on the CRA or the blueprint.
Yes. And I can give you additional, I mean, there's been a lot of correspondence on this, but I do still support the previous city attorney's position on this. And that position is simply that it was a very narrow opinion that the charter did not support that jurisdiction. not that they shouldn't have it, or just simply that it was, that the charter did not support that jurisdiction. There are also some complicating factors in the language that's been provided regarding the employees of those outside agencies. So it's, Mr. Payne's, speaking on this has been very narrowly drawn to the commissioners, and I think that's the intent. But this language would be confusing, but you already acknowledged that we probably have to finesse it, so.
And so the point being.
Right. Well, why don't we, in the limited time that we have left, why don't we see what questions people have that they would like to have the staff come back with on each of these items? And I'm assuming, is there anything that people just absolutely don't want to fool with at this point? And those who are going to be here at the next meeting in particular. So on all three of the items, why don't we have suggestions, from, questions that you'd like the staff to come back with for consideration at that meeting?
I think for the ethics board, I just would like to see the draft language with the staff's perspective on it, so that we got a clear language of what we would likely be moving forward with if we were to see the recommendation.
So, so the clarity on that is, if we make a recommendation, I guess the clarity is, do we understand what this is? If we do understand what it is, we don't have to have the language right now. But if we don't understand what it is, and we need the language to, is that what you're saying?
I think it speaks to something Ms. Tommy was speaking to, that there's some uncertainty right there around, does it cover the employees? Does it only cover the city commissioners? And I just want to make sure that we're clear on which one we're moving forward with. So if we have a suggested final language to move forward, I would be ready to vote on it at that point.
Mr. Payne?
I would just like to say that we should come back next week fully prepared to have a full discussion, question and answer among us all, so that we're clear. And I think we will be able to come up with some kind of vote on each of the three items. And if not, then of course we won't recommend anything as far as those specific items go. But I don't think we should say we can't decide on any of these others, maybe sometime in the future. I think we can come to a decision on these three additional items, at least four.
Well, so I won't be here next week, but the benefit of my wisdom here is that it's sort of what we had talked about last meeting with Ms. James. I think some of these are just, even with additional information next week, if I were here, I would not be comfortable moving forward with, without a whole lot of other discussion about. The police thing is one of them. My concern is that that's a change, really fundamental change in the system of government. You're moving from a council manager system off of that a little bit. And that's a slippery slope. What's next? Then we do this, then we do that. So that's a whole major league discussion in my view. Single member districts, I don't, I think we beat that fairly well here. But if that's something that the board wants to consider moving forward, that's up to you. But again, I don't see, and I think we all recognize, I don't think we're going to be in a position to give concrete, let's put this in the ballot this time on probably most of these items. Dr. Kessler.
Yeah, did we, I may be wrong, but did we vote on not addressing single-member districts in a prior meeting?
We voted on not increasing the number of commissioners. We specifically did not vote on districts.
It was reported that we had voted on it, but that was not accurate.
Okay, Ms. Jones.
I would also caution the committee from a public input standpoint. We have some very loyal members of the public, but we actually have a very large public that these new proposals or ideas have not been communicated to anyone outside of our loyal public. And so I think that we should give adequate time for the greater public to weigh in on the significant things that we're saying that we may consider. So I think that needs to be factored into the timeline, whatever it is.
Yes.
I had a quick, this is a process question about
by?
Like that, and there's like,
Maybe
and
March
like, are we
12th.
supposed to be able to, like, are we gonna get them to review it before it's presented?
We have considered, at least among staff, begun putting some things together, just based on the conversations you've had. We know what the items are, the four items that you were charged with, so the report has to consider those. And I think we'll be prepared, if you wish, we could bring you something next week that says, this is what we hear from your votes, you know, providing a report to the city commission so that it would at least contemplate those items you voted on. Obviously, the compensation item has a little bit of work to do next week. We could at least bring you the template with the specifics on the items you voted on, and then we would have anything additional that you're taking out, we would have to figure out how to addend that to it, but at least you would finish next week saying, yes, that's what we thought it would look like, or you've written terribly, we're gonna have to edit that between now and sometime.
And the reason for that is the timing of the city commission meetings. The goal is to have that report at the March 27th meeting, and our agendas are released the week before.
Okay, Mr. General, then Mr. Pat.
Quick technical question, and I don't mean to drag it any longer, but, so that I understand and then I'm more prepared next week. CRA is covered, blueprint is not,
Not according to the current charter.
but CRA is covered.
Not according to the current charter.
Neither one of those are covered according to the current charter. Okay.
According to the opinion of the city attorney.
I see.
It is the opinion of the ethics board and the ethics board council that they are currently covered.
So when we say covered, we are specifically talking about covered by the independent ethics board, but not necessarily the state ethics board.
That is correct.
That is correct.
So we don't have those commissioners running around getting.
That is correct.
All right, I just want to make sure we make
Yeah, the
that
issue
point.
of where we deal with it, if we had it inside, in-house in the city of Tallahassee, or if we go to the state ethics
So
commission.
right now, at this point, we could all go and make a complaint to the state ethics board against any elected official for wrongdoing for anything.
It was the voted intention of the citizens of Tallahassee to create the independent ethics board so that there would be more local control. There are elements of the Tallahassee Ethics Code that are more strict, more stringent than the state ethics code.
Okay. Other comments?
I guess, what do we need to go to next week, for these I guess to keep these initiatives, or these ideas alive?
Yeah, I mean, in my view, unless there's disagreement, they're all alive. If there are questions that, any additional information that you'd like the staff to prepare, just let them know.
Okay.
If I may, just to clarify that from a staff standpoint, so as I look at the duties of the Independent Ethics Board, I haven't heard new questions other than you were given some draft language tonight, and if you're gonna discuss that, you'd like to have staff's input. I'm simply looking at the city attorney there, so that you have additional context for it, but you have the recommendation there. On the reclassify the police chief as an appointed official, you have emailed me some questions there. We, as I told you, we'd begun some work, but just couldn't put it all together for this meeting and needed to see what the will of the body was, and so we would do our best to answer those questions you've asked. And then on the single-member districts, I didn't hear any specific additional request for information from staff.
Anybody? Yes, Ms. Shanks?
I would like some information on what happened next in terms of who would draw, if the recommendation was to add language to the charter regarding single-member districts, how would that actually be implemented? Who draws the lines? What's the mechanism to do that?
All right, anything else, Mr. Wells?
Just on the independent ethics board, I'd be curious to know, and maybe this is not something we can have, but have there been cases where we've had whistleblowers come forward forward, and it's as simple as just a true or false. Obviously, I'm assuming the names and everything is protected, and that would be the intent, but just how often does that happen? The other piece is, how many complaints are we talking about in a given year?
The Ethics Board is not currently empowered to receive whistleblower complaints, so there have been none. In a discussion with the Inspector General, last month, I believe, he has not actually processed any whistleblower complaints either, although he has been approached by somebody to file a ethics board, a whistleblower complaint, but the Inspector General determined that it did not fulfill the statutory requirements for a whistleblower.
I mean, and I trust what you're saying. To the extent that the city has anything differing, I'd like to get both sides. And, it sounds like there may be some disagreement on how the mechanics are working. So just, if not,
I can
then
verify with the
Anything else? I would have said before we leave, it's been my pleasure to serve as your chair. I've been very impressed with this group in terms of people's thoughtfulness. Everybody comes with biases, everybody comes with a background, but people, in terms of being respectful of each other and listening to what others have to say. I would thank the public too. I mean, you guys care enough to come out here every week. Nobody's paying you either, and so the least we can do is listen to you. And so try to be kind of open to that. So you'll be in the hands of Vice Chair Bryant next week. We'll do a good job. And so thank you for the opportunity.